You know, folks, sometimes the most hurtful things aren't said out loud. They're hidden in plain sight, in the subtle ways someone treats you. Ever get that feeling in your gut that something's off, like someone might be smiling to your face but secretly can't stand you? That's what we're diving into today on Man of Thoughts. We're going to unpack the 10 telltale signs someone might have it out for you, even if they haven't worked up the courage to say it to your face. So buckle up, because we're about to shine a light on those shady characters lurking in the shadows. Have you ever noticed how some people, they just can't seem to look you in the eye? It's like you've got a big old spotlight shining on you and they're trying their darndest to avoid the glare. I remember this one fella I met at a conference, let's call him Bob. Every time I tried to strike up a conversation, Bob would shift his weight, fidget with his tie, and stare intently at anything but me. I swear I thought I was going to find his gaze glued to the back of a soup can at one point. Now, maybe Bob was just shy, right? But there was this energy, like he'd rather swallow a cactus than make eye contact. Avoiding eye contact can be a major red flag, folks. So the next time you're chatting someone up and they're acting like you've got two heads, pay attention. Let me tell you something. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to have a conversation with someone who responds in grunts and monosyllables. It's like pulling teeth, I tell you. I once had a neighbor, we'll call her Agnes, who was the queen of the one-word answer. I'd try to be neighborly, ask her how her day was, and she'd just mumble, fine. Tried to ask about her pet parrot, chirping, weather sunny. It was like pulling teeth trying to get a decent conversation out of Agnes. Listen, communication is a two-way street. If someone's consistently giving you the cold shoulder with their words, they're probably not too keen on having you around. So if you find yourself constantly on the receiving end of those fine and good answers, take the hint. We've all been there, folks. That sinking feeling in your stomach when you find out everyone and their dog was invited to a party, except you. I remember this one time back in the day when all my colleagues were buzzing about this big bash at a fancy restaurant. They were comparing outfits, planning carpools, the whole 9 yards. And me, I was stuck pretending I hadn't heard a thing. Turns out they'd all gotten together for a little team bonding without me. Look, I get it, not everyone's going to be best buddies, but intentionally excluding someone, that's a deliberate choice. So, if you find yourself constantly on the outside looking in, it might be time to ask yourself, is it me or is it them? You know, folks, they say actions speak louder than words, and nowhere is that truer than with body language. I remember this one guest on my show, a young woman who was convinced her boss had it out for her. Now, this boss always said all the right things, but his body language, whole different story. Every time she'd walk into his office, his arms would be crossed. His face would be a mask, and he'd angle his body away from her like he couldn't wait to escape. Now, I'm no body language expert, but even I could tell this guy was sending off some serious stay-away vibes. Listen, crossed arms, turned backs, lack of eye contact, these are all classic signs that someone's not exactly thrilled to be in your presence. So, pay attention to those non-verbal cues, folks. Now, I like to think I'm a pretty funny guy. Got away with words, you know. But I've learned the hard way that not everyone appreciates a good joke. There was this one fella I used to work with, a real stick in the mud, who never cracked a smile at my jokes, not even a chuckle. I could be telling the funniest darn story and he'd just stare at me with this blank expression. It was like performing for a brick wall, I tell you. Made me question my entire comedic career. Listen, humor is subjective, I get it, but if someone consistently finds you about as funny as a tax audit, there's a good chance they just don't find you all that amusing. So, if your jokes are met with crickets, don't take it personally. We all have that one person in our lives who just loves to criticize. They're like a dog with a bone, always finding something to nitpick. I remember this one neighbor, bless her heart, who was always on my case about something. My lawn was too long, my car was too loud, my tie was crooked. You name it, she'd find a way to criticize it. It got so bad that I started avoiding her like the plague. Listen, constructive criticism is one thing, but constant negativity, that's just plain toxic. If someone's always finding fault with you, it's a good sign they don't respect you or value your presence. Now, I'm a hugger, I'll admit it, but even I know that physical touch isn't everyone's cup of tea. I remember this one colleague I had who was like a human cactus. Every time I'd go in for a handshake or a pat on the back, he'd flinch like I was about to poke him with a hot poker. It was awkward, to say the least, and it definitely made me think twice about getting too close. Listen, some people are just naturally more reserved when it comes to physical touch, but if someone consistently shies away from any kind of contact, it's a sign they're not comfortable with you invading their personal space. You know, folks, one of the biggest signs someone doesn't really care for you is their utter lack of interest in your life. I'm talking about those people who glaze over the second you start talking about yourself. You could be sharing your deepest hopes and dreams, and they'd probably find a way to change the subject to the weather. I remember this one dinner party I went to where I was seated next to this woman who clearly had zero interest in anything I had to say. I tried to engage her in conversation, asked her about her work, her family, her hobbies. Nothing. It was like talking to a brick wall. But if someone consistently shows zero interest in your life, it's a sign they just don't see you as someone worth knowing. Now, I'm all for a little harmless gossip, but when it turns mean-spirited, that's when I draw the line. I remember this one time, back in my university days, when I overheard a group of classmates talking about me behind my back. They were saying some pretty nasty things, let me tell you. It hurt, folks. It hurt to know that people I thought were my friends were saying those kinds of things about me. Listen, people who talk about you behind your back are cowards. They're not brave enough to say it to your face, so they resort to whispering and spreading rumors. If you find out someone's been bad-mouthing you, confront them. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to visibly relax the second you leave the room? It's like they've been holding their breath the entire time you were there. I remember this one office party where I excused myself to use the restroom, and when I came back I could practically see the tension lift from the room. It was like they'd been let out of jail. Listen, I'm not saying you should be the life of the party, but you shouldn't be the reason people are counting down the minutes until you leave. If you notice a pattern of people seeming relieved when you're gone, it's time to do some soul searching. So there you have it, folks. 10 telltale signs that someone might just be harboring some secret dislike towards you. Look, I know it's not always easy to face these hard truths, but trust me, it's better to know where you stand. If you're picking up on these signs, don't ignore them. Address the issue head on, or better yet, walk away from the negativity. Life's too short to surround yourself with people who don't appreciate you for the amazing person you are.